absolutely invigorating. I just wish I could give myself a dose of it as I get older and older, but it doesn't work that way. Anyway, congratulations to the awardees. I feel really honored to have this opportunity to salute you today. Well done on what you've accomplished, and good luck with all that you will surely achieve in the future. You will be leading our industry in the years ahead, which makes you an important audience. Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Moore. I appreciate that. Now, bearing in mind the lightning rate of change today, I thought it would be interesting to go back 3 years when coincidentally I was standing in this very place with a similar group of awardees. Cast your mind back to 2012, if you will, and let's try to recall what we were facing. Well, for a start, the world was a much safer place because my son had not yet secured his driver's license. Interest rates were under duress, and depending on who you talk to, they're still under duress. Alternative capital was a looming agenda item, and the response to it was guarded because it was new and a potential threat. Today, it is an accepted part of the landscape and is in fact embraced by industry. Happily, Bermuda has emerged as a leading jurisdiction for alternative capital. In 2012, we were talking about the prospect of mergers and acquisitions as a logical next step in the economic progression. Over the past 18 months, merger and acquisition activity has become a significant reality, and the effects are being felt by all of us, unless you've been under a rock for the last couple of years. I guess the story is, you can pretty accurately predict what's coming down the pipeline, but that doesn't seem to diminish the power or impact of change. I include my son's driving in that comment. We knew it was coming, but my wife and I are nevertheless quite shocked by the reality. Well, today I'd like to share some perspectives on number one, the current state of affairs, and two, the likely impact on the Bermuda market and those of us who are in this room and work in this market. And number three, what can and should we do about it? Let's look at the current state of affairs first. What does our world today look like? Well, the Bermuda market is a dynamic and entrepreneurial marketplace. Our ability and willingness to provide solutions and put capital to work quickly to emerging risk issues is unique. We have strong intellectual capital in Bermuda. This, combined with the ability to design flexible programs and cover, means we should continue to drive innovative products. I'm confident that Bermuda will continue to evolve from its origins in the mid-80s and 90s as a source of risk capital to provide multiple solutions for multiple lines of insurance and reinsurance. It is a center of innovation for the property and cat underwriting industry, and has emerged as a leading jurisdiction for alternative capital by attracting significant amounts of pension fund capital. We have all the ingredients for continued success. But despite our unofficial national anthem, Bermuda is another world, Bermuda is not another world. We are a global village in a world that is not just flat, but hyper-connected. We are part of a global, technology-fueled economy, an environment in which change is literally changing faster. Complexity is the norm, and an accelerated rate of innovation is impacting our lives in ways that most of us could have never imagined. Just think back to when ACE and Excel first started over 30 years ago. They were using typewriters. There was no internet. Cell phones, for the few that had them, were the size of concrete blocks, and you can only imagine, like, trying to be cool with this big old concrete block. And this is not trivial. Think of how you function today. Can you imagine leaving home without your smartphone? Or operating without pretty much any of the technological tools that you depend on? And I haven't even mentioned the sophisticated modeling analytics required today. However, let's be clear. It was the well-educated, bright people who created the Bermuda International Business Success Story. And regardless of the technological advances, high-quality intellectual capital is absolutely critical, regardless of all the challenges. In my view, we need to pay attention to three key factors to make sense of today's world. A world in which we are constantly being asked to do more with less. Number one, increased complexity. And you can define that complexity as the multiplicity of interactive elements, or the interdependence of those interactive elements, and the diversity of those interactive, interdependent elements. Now, did anybody get that? Well, I told you it was complicated. But let's try it again. Knowing the starting conditions is no guarantee of future outcomes. There's just too many constantly changing, interactive, interdependent, and diverse elements. The second factor is an exponential increase in the rate of change. And you can define change as the increase in computing power. And when you reflect and you think about the fact that the smartphone has more computing power than the first station that took a man to the moon, that's amazing. And you just take a minute and process that. This little smartphone that you kind of take for granted. And you just think about what's happening in terms of some of the products that are out there. The smartphone has made watches almost obsolete. It's made the GPS almost, no, I'm sorry. It's made watches obsolete, GPS, and cameras. You don't need that anymore. So contracting product cycles, and also the speed of which emerging issues manifest themselves. And the third factor is the speed of innovation, creative destruction, new economic orders quickly replacing existing economic orders. No one's seen anything like this before. So, all of this is intriguing, I know, but what does it actually mean for those of us who earn our living in the insurance business? Well, for a start, with all this change going on, we can be assured that the old market dynamics no longer apply. It used to be that to have a market change, 4 things would happen. Number 1, you would have a period of sustained loss activity. Number 2, there would be a contraction of reinsurance capacity. And number 3, there would be changes in solvency requirements. I see my friends over the BII looking at me. And number 4, for the executive table over here, the executives would have to get disciplined and stop chasing market share. Now, you can make a strong argument those 4 things have happened. And I think the inflection point was probably 2011, when we had major catastrophic events. We had the Japanese tsunami. We had the floods of biblical proportions in Thailand. We had the earthquakes in Chile and I think it was New Zealand. And let's not forget the terrible tornadoes that devastated Joplin. We had over $119 billion of insured losses. And the old dynamics used to dictate that if you had $100 billion in claims, you could automatically set your watch to and it would be a hard market. That just doesn't exist anymore. These are definitely unprecedented times. Now let's just talk about a few of the trends that I think are impacting the landscape as well, that are driving some of this merger and acquisition activity. And there's 5 trends. There's globalization, there's big data and analytics, alternative capital, technology, distribution. All of these are having a profound impact on the landscape. And let's just talk about a few of them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but globalization. Everyone's looking for the next blue ocean. Everyone's looking for the next new white space. How are we going to get that product and geographical diversification? Big data and analytics. Those of us who can harness the data stand to secure a competitive advantage in terms of better predictability. And if you were to quantify the amount of data that's been collected, 90% of the data that's been collected has been collected in the last 3 years. And it's the size of a golf ball. And if this rate continues, in the next 5 or 6 years, that amount of data is going to be the size of the sun. Now you reflect on that for a minute, and just think what we're going to be able to do with that. It's absolutely amazing. Alternative capital. Let's put that in perspective in terms of the impact it's having on our industry. In 2005, there was probably about $5 billion of alternative capital out there. You fast forward to 2012, there was $45 billion of alternative capital, which is an 800% increase. And they're predicting that by the time 2015 is in the history books, that number will go up to $68 billion of alternative capital. And come 2018, when that's done and dusted, that number is going to go up anywhere to $120 to $160 billion. Amazing. Now, maybe alternative capital could be the solution to sustain relevancy as capital is used to mitigate risk more effectively, or it could potentially fuel accelerated innovation, which I think is what's happening right now. I'm not going to spend any time on regulation and distribution and technology. I think that's been beat to death. But and you can argue all day about whether or not these factors are actually driving some of the merger and acquisition activity that's going on today. But you layer on top of that we're in a period of extended benign loss activity and low interest rates. It's contributing to the M&A trend. So what will happen? What will happen with all this M&A activity that everybody's experiencing? Well, I think there's going to be three outcomes. I think one group of companies will get it right, and they will get the scale and geographical and product diversification that they're looking for, and they'll also get those economies of scale on the back end. The second group of companies will think they need to get that scale and will fail horribly. They'll get it wrong, and it could potentially cause a temporary abatement in the amount of merger and acquisition activity to the point where you see divestitures and displaced management teams, displaced underwriting talent. The third option, I think, is going to be where some of the companies decide to stay relatively small, nimble, and quick. And they will attract some of the displaced underwriting talent that's out there. So, what does all this mean? Part two. What does all this mean for the Bermuda market and all of you who are here today? Well, given the increasing level of complexity and exponential acceleration in the rate of change, the impact of alternative capital, and changes to distribution models, we can expect a period of intense disruption as business models continue to evolve. On the plus side, the Bermuda market has a great track record of innovation and execution excellence and responding to the opportunities that come from change. It's in our DNA. However, we must take nothing for granted. It would be foolish to rest on our laurels. Financial and high-quality intellectual capital is fluid, sophisticated, and opportunistic, and will locate where it's well treated. One of our greatest challenges, I believe, is the competition for top-quality intellectual capital, as other jurisdictions try to replicate the Bermuda success story. The global battle to attract, retain, and continue to develop high-quality intellectual capital has never been tougher. But it's a battle that Bermuda must continue to wage if we're going to retain our competitive advantage. And please, don't make the mistake of equating bricks and mortar with sustainability in the case of our industry. There is no longer a correlation between major catastrophic events and an infusion of jobs and new buildings springing up around Hamilton on the heels of these events. That's what we've seen in the past, but those days are gone, and today's model is very different. I'm highlighting how tough it is because we place ourselves at risk if we are not honest. If our attitude is complacent and entitled, we will lose. The world of business today is an uncharted territory. The situation is fluid, and no one has seen this movie before. Now, Bermuda has an excellent reputation, but the new paradigm will severely test our character and will determine who we really are. Do we have what it takes to sustain our cutting edge? Silence.
Yeah.
That's the right answer. So let's explore what we can and should do. There is no other jurisdiction that is better suited to deal with the opportunities that come from change. But markets don't run themselves. People do, and everyone in this room has a role to play. I commend and I congratulate you guys on your accomplishments today, but I want to remind you that the challenge and indeed the opportunity is constant. The landscape is extremely dynamic, and this is but a milestone, not an endpoint. Your success will be determined by how seriously you commit to lifelong learning. Don't ever finish your education, and I mean that in the broadest sense. Take advantage of training and development opportunities, both tangible and intangible, and you will stay ahead of the curve. Yes, we need the technical skills, but our soft skills will differentiate us. And that's something that's been lost with all this technological advancements. Now, one of my favorite quotes is, "What lies behind us and what lies before us is nothing compared to what lies within us." And remember that, and I'm going to say it one more time to emphasize it. What lies behind us and what lies before us is nothing compared to what lies within us. Personally, I'm really upbeat about Bermuda. I believe we can sustain and enhance our growing reputation as the Silicon Valley of the insurance and reinsurance market. Our value proposition as a jurisdiction has always been the ability to respond quickly to change. And as product cycles continue to contract, Speed to market is critical, and those holding the capital, those who can deploy that capital to meet the immediate need, stand to make the most for the longest. I challenge you guys to become students of the business and advocates of the value proposition of international business, externally and just as critically internally. If Bermuda is to remain relevant and open for business, we need you to be ambassadors for international business. Now, there are several components to the Bermuda value proposition, but I'd like you to focus on the following three. Speed to market. Speed to market. Bureaucracy that is not necessarily overly burdensome. We must differentiate between the nice-to-haves and the critical-to-haves to enable financial capital to be deployed quickly. We have an agglomeration of economies down here. We got all the services necessary to conduct our business. We got accountants, we got lawyers, we got bankers. And we need to make sure that we maintain an enabling environment for the free flow of high-quality intellectual capital. We got to stop putting up these barriers. It's critical to our success, our continued success. An enlightened, enabling, but internationally credible regulator in the form of the BMA. Those guys are the real rock stars. So if you see your regulator, give him a nice hug. And this is one that's not talked about a lot, but it's kind of taken for granted, but a credible judicial system equipped to deal with commercial disputes when they arise. And there's others, and I would encourage each and every one of you guys to get familiar with the value proposition of Bermuda. It's critical. We definitely have technically and structurally what it takes, but what we need is to ensure that we remain user-friendly, friction-free, and solution-oriented. Our attitude and our behaviors will set us apart from our competitors. When people talk about innovation, they usually refer to one of four types: routine, disruptive, architectural, or radical. And those usually involve things like process and products. No one talks about behavior. Bermuda is a service economy. We should be constantly looking at ways to innovate our behavior so that our clients have a differentiated experience and we continue to provide high value. Although we can make informed and intelligent guesses about how it will unfold, we obviously can't predict the future. And anybody who thinks they can predict the future is a poor student of history. What we can do is aspire to shape our desired future by making sure that we are relevant and able to capitalize on where the fates lead us. We need to be ready to respond to the global challenges that Bermuda has always had to face. A tiny island in the middle of nowhere. At all times and in all circumstances, we've needed resilience to survive. And as the late, great Nelson Mandela once said, it always seems impossible until it is done. We can do this. Every single person in this room is critical. The fact that you are here demonstrates your commitment. I urge you to make a commitment to increasing your intellectual net worth every day for the rest of your life. And don't forget to share your skill sets with others to make an improvement in the community that you live in. Give freely of your time. Let's turn this period of extreme fluidity and change into an opportunity. Let's use our value proposition, harness our skills, and continue to provide real value and make a difference. Make it happen. Make an impact. Thank you, and I wish you continued success. I believe in you guys, and I believe in Bermuda. Thank you very much, and congratulations once again to all the awardees.